A very controversial topic in the Nintendo community as of late is definitely Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. These are two new Pokemon games that were revealed and to be released this year, and it's definitely split the fan base into two groups that either love it and are really looking forward to it, or aren't really looking forward to it as much and kinda hate it. But I sort of fall in the middle. I have very mixed opinions about these two Pokemon games that are coming out this year, and I wanted to organize my thoughts today into 5 pros, 5 things that I'm really looking forward to about these games, and 5 cons, 5 things that I'm definitely not as excited about for these games. And the goal of this video isn't just to share my thoughts, but it's also to sort of give you an idea of what you should be expecting when these two games come out. And I really want to know what you think about these as well, so remember to list your pros and cons about Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee in the comment section of this video, because I'm really curious about what you think about these games. And with that being said, let's get into the first pro. Definitely Pokemon following you and being in the overworld. This is something that Pokemon fans have been clamoring for, this inclusion. People have wanted this for so long, and it's finally here. People love Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, not just because they're amazing games based on the incredible second generation of Pokemon, but also because of the mechanic introduced where you could have your Pokemon follow you. And you could check up on them, see how their personality is, how they're feeling at the moment. Maybe if their health is down, they won't be as excited. And this was just a really nice mechanic to have. It doesn't add way too much gameplay wise, but just the aesthetics of having that and all this kind of stuff, it really helps increase the amount of attachment that we have to these creatures in the Pokemon game, and we're getting it back in Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. And not only are we getting this much desired feature in the game, we're also getting wild Pokemon battles in the overworld. Gone are the random encounters, the constant searching through the grass to find a shiny Pokemon. Now, presumably, you just walk into a room and have the Pokemon spawn in, and some of them will already be there, and presumably one of them will be a shiny if they want to do that in terms of how the overworld Pokemon will actually look. Shiny hunting is not one of the topics I'm most into, though, although I know that there is a massive subsection of the Pokemon fanbase who's really into it. But that's not the main point here. The main point is that you could choose to fight whichever Pokemon you want, instead of being forced in these random battles with these Pokemon that you don't want to fight. Maybe you're not looking to add another Pokemon to your team at the moment, and you just want to keep continuing your travels throughout the game. But now, if you really do want to add another Pokemon to your squad, you could just find them in the overworld. And it really just makes it look more realistic, rather than having all these larger Pokemon hide in the grass, which is really unrealistic, whereas now you could actually see them popping out of the grass. This will definitely be a great addition that is remembered by the Pokemon fanbase in years to come after these games are released. Con number 1, I think, just based on what we've seen so far, so this one might not be too lasting, so take this one with a grain of salt a little bit. The hand-holding. I have a feeling that this Pokemon game could be really easy, and I'll get into some of the reasons for this later, but you could tell some of the evidence of this is the introduction of the second player, which I think is a really good idea and really supports the local play, which is something that has been suffering recently with the boom that has been online gaming and this online multiplayer. People aren't really playing games locally as much, and it's kind of a sad thing, but it's just the reality of things at the moment. Hand-holding is something that I've strongly disliked in the Pokemon games, having them walk you through everything, and I have a feeling that because of the demographic that they're trying to target here, having to bring people over from Pokemon Go into Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, and again, I'm going to be talking about this in further depth later on in the video, I think that they're really going to strive to make sure that people get through this game and don't get ridiculously pissed off that the battles are much more difficult than they anticipated. Now, when you introduce in the second player, a regular one-on-one battle will become a 2 versus 1. That's kind of unfair, to say the least. So this could kind of be considered a pro and a con, because I like the idea of the second player traveling with you. However, just because of all the advantages that you get over your opponents because of the introduction of the second player, it definitely contributes to a con overall, and it's making the game significantly easier. Way more than the XP share did when it was introduced in Generation 6 and implemented into Generation 7, which made those games way easier. At least that had an option where you could turn it off, and I consider that this sort of does too, because you don't have to use the local multiplayer, although that would definitely be one of the primary features of the game, since they're very much marketing that in a big way. So it sort of makes this game a lot easier than it should be. Pro number 2. I really like the general look of the Pokemon in battle. Now, there's things about the graphics that I don't like, and I'll get into it in the next point, but overall, I think some of the locations and the buildings, they look really nice. The colors, specifically, is something that I love. The vibrance of the colors, the way that they just pop off the screen. This is something that could not be experienced in the original Pokemon Yellow. This is something that could not be experienced in the Fire Red and Leaf Green remakes, the closest things that we've had, the most recent things that we've had to a modern iteration of Generation 1, which is sort of why they're probably doing this, because they want to make sure Kanto is solidified in your brains. I'm going to talk about that later, but still, some of the graphics look really nice. I know some of the Pokemon in battle, even though I praise them, some of them are sort of reused from Pokemon Go, while some of them are new. I do still like the look of them though, despite the fact that some of them are reused. Some of the components of the graphics do look very nice, and it's something that I'm looking forward to experiencing in the game. But con number 2 also relates to the graphics. There are several negatives about the graphics, which is, it's just a big thing, a big component of the game that I wanted to talk about in this video, so I'm sort of splitting it into both a pro and a con. The graphics, while nice, do need improvement. I hear lots of people comparing them to an upgraded 3DS game, and I could definitely see this. While some of the colors being so vibrant, it definitely looks like something that could not be pulled off on the 3DS, and it's just some of the effects and the graphics and all this kind of stuff about the way the Pokemon look. There are other things that looks like it could have been done on the 3DS, and some things that the 3DS actually did better. One thing I'd like to mention in this section is the character models. In Pokemon X and Y, lots of people didn't like the character models because of the chibi looks, and praised the art style of the character models in Sun and Moon because it finally made them look more realistic in terms of the human beings. And it seems like in Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, they're reverting us back to this chibi art style. I don't mind it, some consider it a nice stylistic choice, but I did like the style of Sun and Moon's character models much better. And if you've been watching this channel for a while now, you definitely know that I'm not a hardcore fan of Generation 7 or anything like that, but that is something that I prefer about Generation 7 to what we're seeing here. Also, some of the Pokemon in the Overworld, while I love the fact that the Pokemon are following you and roaming around, these models could definitely be improved a lot more as well, especially in your encounter with Mewtwo. I mean, come on the Nintendo Switch, I know it's not like the 4K level graphics, and some of the things on the PS4 are way better and whatnot, but you've also got games on there like Mario Odyssey, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, all these great games with the great graphics that are making the most out of the Nintendo Switch, and even on portable, some of them look better than your encounter with Mewtwo. How could you mess up such a climactic encounter like this with the graphical capabilities of the Nintendo Switch? I just don't understand it. Well, there is a reason for this. The Pokemon Company has a track record of having relatively lackluster graphics when it goes onto the console for the first time. There's a significant difference in the graphics and the way the game runs when you compare Pokemon Diamond and Pearl to Pokemon Black and White 2. There's just no comparing them. It looks like they're on a different console, but they're not. So maybe it is a good thing that Pokemon is making Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, so they're not going to ruin up the graphics as much for the core Pokemon RPG, the next generation that is to be coming out next year. Pro number 3, this is something that a lot of people don't like, but I'm going to explain why I like it. This is the return to simplicity. I said I'd talk about Pokemon Go, and I'm going to start talking about it right now. One of the main reasons for this game existing is because of the massive fan base that was created from the release of Pokemon Go. In total, the game had around 800 million downloads. I heard that figure somewhere, and that is absolutely insane. Now, that's definitely not the amount of active users currently playing the game. I see a lot of people saying online, yes, the game is sort of dead. However, there's still a lot of people that play it, and a lot of revenue is being generated for the Pokemon Company from this game still. So there is definitely value in pitching a game that is more simple and marketed to these Pokemon Go fans being created here. It is marketing genius of the Pokemon Company to create a game like this that's including some Go mechanics, which we'll talk about later, and making it simpler in form so it's easier to access for these Pokemon Go fans. When Go launched and was at its peak, only the original Kanto Pokemon were included in it, and this made it easier for people to access and don't have to wrap their minds around all these new Pokemon that are being introduced. While us hardcore Pokemon fans definitely desire a new generation introducing brand new creatures as opposed to the ones that we've already seen, this game is not targeted for us. And I can see why this is a con to many people, but this is definitely important and crucial to the legacy of Nintendo and the Nintendo Switch and the Pokemon Company. This is going to do so much for them and greatly increase the amount of hardcore Pokemon fans that there are. I see many people talking about, okay, these Pokemon Go fans, they're not true Pokemon fans. And I agree with that. But they are Pokemon fans because they're fans of a game that is based on Pokemon. And you could make them more hardcore Pokemon fans and have more knowledge about the series if you bring them over to what is essentially a bridge of a main series installment and a spin-off title in what Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee are being. Because while they're sort of based on a main series game, since the game is sort of a remake of Pokemon Yellow, but not exactly because it introduces some different mechanics, these different mechanics are sort of based on Pokemon Go, which is better for them to access, and it'll allow them to bridge over much better and much easier into the Nintendo Switch so they could play Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. This return to simplicity is something that's going to be very good for them, because you think about it, if they had to start out with this Generation 8, which everybody seems to be getting excited for, because this is the next game for the hardcore Pokemon fans, people like you and me, presumably, that are watching this video right now. The game for us is coming out next year. Imagine if they had to start out with that game. Let's say 100 new Pokemon were introduced, and I know that's a heavy estimate because in the last 2 generations, about 80 Pokemon have been introduced, which has been pretty sad, to be honest with you. But let's say a brand new person who's really only experienced things with a few Pokemon in Pokemon Go has to go and learn all of these new Pokemon. It's going to be very intimidating for them when they're probably not going to stick with the series in the long run, thus reducing the amount of Pokemon fans overall. Whereas in this instance, it's much more accessible to them because this game will contain mostly Pokemon that they already know about, which is going to be much better in the long run. Now, a problem that is faced here is that, yes, we're going back to Kanto again. This is con number 3. Many people, including myself, are so sick of seeing Kanto all the time. And while I just explained that point, which might be my biggest pro in this video, I understand why this is happening, but I still don't like it in terms of my personal wants and desires as a Pokemon fan. In Generation 1, it was based on Kanto. In Generation 2, you go back to Kanto. In Generation 3, they remade Fire Red and Leaf Green. In Generation 4, in the Heart Gold Soul Silver remakes, you go back to Kanto. Generation 5, we finally got a break from this. And then in Generation 6, they gave us Kanto starters and so many Mega Evolutions based on Kanto Pokemon that it felt that the nostalgia was just being shoved down your throat, and you're forced to accept it. And in Generation 7, the Alola forms are entirely based on Kanto Pokemon. How much could you push Kanto on us anymore? I feel the fan service is just way out of control at this point. And me, personally, as a hardcore Pokemon fan, I am tired of this. And I understand why it's being done, as I stated in my last pro point, but in my personal wants, and I know that we're getting this new game next year, but I am tired of the fan service, and that is a problem with this game. Now, for pro number 4, this is something that's kind of smaller in the grand scheme of things, but I still really like it and wanted to talk about it. This is the Pokemon customization. Now, I know it seems like it's only really going to be for both Pikachu and Eevee, the mascots of both versions, but you're able to customize their clothing and just customize how they're going to be looking in battle. And I think just for the aesthetic purposes alone, this is going to be really nice, and it's just a way of personalizing you with these 2 Pokemon in particular. I love how they ride on top of you and are just great mascots for these games and make perfect sense in the context of Pokemon Yellow remakes. And while I think it would be nice to have this feature for all Pokemon, I mean, who wouldn't want to dress up their Onix, right? But it's understandable as to why this was limited, and I felt that the abuse of this feature could be extremely prevalent if you were to give this to all Pokemon, and it wouldn't really seem like the form of the series would remain as it has been entirely if this was implemented for all Pokemon. So it does make it seem special, and there's a reason for you to keep those 2 on your team, on your squad throughout your journey. There are some problems with those 2 Pokemon because it doesn't seem like you could evolve them, which kind of sucks. but I do like this customization. Con number 4 is the heavy reliance on Go features. And while I mentioned before that it's very nice to have these features implemented so that the people who are very familiar with Pokemon Go, it's easier for them to access and be introduced to the Pokemon main series form of games. As a hardcore Pokemon fan, I do not like that this heavy reliance on Go features is being implemented into this game. Now, I sort of get that Pokemon, they had to damage control a little bit because they were afraid of people being upset about this game being introduced in the first place, because they thought that maybe some of the hardcore Pokemon fans wouldn't like it because it wasn't entirely true to the series, and that's why they had to confirm that the next big game is coming next year, and that is a very positive thing about this, and I'm going to mention in my next point. However, I still do not like that it's entirely reliant on some of these features, such as the CP being implemented, and I get that that could just be a display of the overall Pokemon stats to give you a sense of how good they are and whatnot. But also the Go catching system is being implemented. There's no more wild battles, and I get that some people are excited that there's no more wild battles because, let's be honest, some of those were kind of annoying in the first place. And catching legendary Pokemon is just a monotonous throw a ball, throw a ball, throw a ball. It's really annoying to do that. And now this introduces more skill into throwing the Pokeballs because you have to get it into the correct spot in the circle, obviously, as it is in Pokemon Go. But still, in my personal desire for a main series Pokemon game, I would not want these features to be implemented a lot. Plus, you could transfer all these old Pokemon that you had on Pokemon Go over into Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, and that could obviously be abused for if you were to get more shiny Pokemon in Pokemon Go, and you would just flood this game with these shiny Pokemon. But as I'm going to talk about in the future, this may not be that kind of a big concern for online, but that is sort of a problem to have an over-reliance on Pokemon Go related features. Pro number 5, my final big pro, is that this is basically a trial run. If you're upset about Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, do not worry. Pokemon understands this. They're getting all the kinks worked out right now. They're adapting to an HD console for the first time. And don't worry, your game is going to be coming next year. And because it's coming next year, and because they sort of already have an engine in development, that means your game next year is going to be that much better. Your game next year, your new generation, what you want, what the hardcore Pokemon fans desire. It's not going to have to go through this process of being the trial run because this game is it. So if this game bombs and ends up sucking, it's only being used to carry over the Pokemon Go fans anyway, and it's not for you, so you don't have to worry about that. Pokemon X and Y was sort of the trial run for the 3DS, and while there are many things that I liked about X and Y, it was definitely a shorter game overall and lacked a lot of substance, which is what I sort of expect these games to do because the main development resources that were put into this game were built on making the engine and making a lot of the Pokemon models and all this kind of stuff, whereas these Pokemon models are probably just going to be reused for the next Pokemon game, and they're just going to have to make a few more models in order to catch up because they're already probably making the models for the next generations right now. There is a new Pokemon being introduced in these games, which is something that we could all get excited about. One new Pokemon, so they are going to have to make the model for that too. Just baby steps in terms of the workload here. Do not worry, your game is on the way. This is a bridge between the main series titles and the spin-off titles. This is not what you're going to have to worry about if you think that this over-reliance on Go features is going to heavily impact the series overall. I'm upset that it's impacting this game because me personally as a hardcore Pokemon fan, I would like it to be in the way that I've been accustomed to, but it makes sense for the purpose of Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. And that's what mainly these pros are supporting. The pros are really just supporting the arguments of why the Pokemon companies do this and why it makes complete sense why they're doing this. Because the process is, you're taking these fans from the very popular mobile game Pokemon Go, or at least once was this huge phenomenon, Pokemon Go. You're taking them over and easing them into the Pokemon series a little bit, using some of the mechanics they're familiar with, and introducing them to some concepts that they're not as familiar with. And then you finally bridge those people over to a full-on main series Pokemon title with none of those Go mechanics that they were familiar with, but also some of those mechanics that they learned about in Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, and finally, full-on introduce them to a new main series Pokemon game. And with that being said, I'm gonna get into the final con of this video, and it's that there's a big lack of online features in this game, and this is a problem for me. While it's been confirmed that there are online battles and trades, there's no battle spot, which means there's probably no randomized battling, and there's no GTS either, which has to do with the shiny point that I mentioned earlier, where people could just get the shinies from Pokemon Go and transfer them over, and I thought that it would flood the GTS, and while that'll still be a problem for regular trades, it won't be as big of a deal because of the lack of the GTS, but that's not a reason why the GTS should be removed. Now, I know the GTS is a completely messed up feature, and I hope they completely rework it. However, it serves a purpose, and while it does serve its purpose in a very lackluster way, there will be a big absence from the Pokemon games in this modern era if this global trade system is not implemented, something that has been included in main series Pokemon games since Generation 4. So yeah, you could online battle with other people, but not doing it in a randomized way means you gotta get organized with all the friends on your Nintendo Switch, presumably, and then have the battle that way. Why can't you just hop into a battle on Battle Spot? I really don't understand this. One of the things that I was looking forward to upon its reveal about the return to simplicity is that you reduce it to 151 Pokemon. Maybe it'll clean up the competitive system a little bit more. Maybe there would be a little bit more than 151 because of the introduction of the Alola forms, which I believe there's some of them coming over to Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee as well. But I thought this toxicity that has been going on in some of the competitive Pokemon communities with Pokemon, like just stall and all this kind of stuff, it would sort of be a nice fresh take because it would be a reset. You'd be able to use Pokemon like Onix and regular Charizard again, having them be somewhat viable in competitive play as compared to nowadays where a regular Charizard will not do anything in competitive battles and you're forced to use this Mega Evolution. I thought this return to simplicity would allow you to remove some of the features that I didn't really like because it was making Pokemon more than it needed to be, overcomplicating the game, adding in Z moves and Mega Evolutions, two features that I never really cared for, and I didn't really want to be accustomed to having them in my main series Pokemon titles. And again, while this is not entirely a main series game, it is using some of the main series components, and it's sort of going to be considered in that way. And it's 2018. If you're having the lack of the core online features the Pokemon fans have been accustomed to for all these years, it's a severe disappointment. Now, I really want to know what you think about Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. Give me a comment about what you feel about this game, what your pros and cons are. Make sure to subscribe for more content about these games coming really soon, and check out some of the amazing videos that I have on the screen right now for you. I'll see you next time.